Um, Hello, Assalamualaikum everyone. We are live. I'll just wait for a few of the members to join in. And I'm sorry about the delay. The internet wasn't working. There was no electricity, and I'm really sorry about it. So I've wasted a lot of time. I try my best to join the time. Always I try to be punctual, but it's just the electricity and the net issue. Okay, so I'll jump right in. And hi, Amna. Thank you for joining. I am so annoyed because of the whole internet issue, but Alhamdulillah, I'm glad I'm doing this, and I'm doing it from my phone. So it is going to move a lot. So I'm sorry about that. Okay. So about this session, the guest today is really, really, really close to my heart, because have anybody watched Tare Zameen Par? If you have, what was Amir Khan to the boy in that movie, that is what Areesa is to my son. She changed the whole game for him. For me, she is not just to help for my son, but she has helped me so much, and she have helped me understand what actually the logic is behind. The best part about Areesa is that she's so logical, and she is always so to the point, and she gives evidences so well that you exactly know what is going to work, what is not going to work, and what is the reason behind it. And I am the person who always wants that logic to be understood about why there's a certain behavior coming and why there's a certain behavior that is not coming. So without any further ado, because I wasted a lot of time already, I'll just add her on the screen. Hello, Areesa. How are you?
That was such a wonderful introduction of me, I have to say.
I don't know if you watch Bollywood movies, but have you watched Tare Zameen Par?
I have actually, yes.
Oh, I'm glad.
I totally understood what you meant.
Okay, so Areesa, I'm really sorry again for the internet and the delay. I know you are very busy. So can you give your introduction to the members?
Yes. Don't worry about it. I know the internet for everybody in the last couple of days has, 15, 20 minutes. Each session of mine is going over just because of the internet problem, I think, throughout Karachi. So a little bit about me. I'm an educational psychologist. I qualified from the UK in 2012, and I worked in the UK for a few years before I moved to Dubai. And in Dubai, I worked as part of a clinic that's inside a school. So I worked with a center that's kind of linked to a group of schools. And we go in and we give therapy and assessments and things. And during that time, I trained to become a BCBA. And it's been over 2 years now since I've been a BCBA, and it's actually the part of my job that I much prefer to the part where I assess people and deliver bad news. This is kind of how I'm seen as a psychologist. But as a BCBA, I feel like I'm a little more grounded. I have a plan. So now I practice in both Dubai and in Karachi. So in Dubai, I supervise a team of therapists, and I am there for about a week a month. And the rest of the 3 weeks, I am in Karachi. And over here, I work at part of a clinic with a group of pediatricians, and I work directly with children. So that's a little bit of summary about me.
Okay, thank you so much, Areesa. Now I'll just jump in to the first topic, the first question, that what are social skills and why are they important for children?
Social skills are, I think, for everybody else, it's the talking, the communicating, and the interacting with other people. And it's a very, very big part of everyone's life, whether you are a child to adult. Social skills actually doesn't consist of just the behaviors we have when we are interacting with other people. It's also the behaviors we have when we are in the presence of someone else or in a social environment or a context. It doesn't necessarily mean us talking. Just context. It doesn't necessarily. Just us being in the same environment and someone else and not interacting actually still qualifies as social skills. Social skills are divided into two. They are the social nonverbal behavior versus the social verbal behavior. So the nonverbal behavior includes things like eye contact, how much space we keep between ourselves and the other person when we're communicating with them. Do we look at the person when someone's calling our name? Or even like if you're sitting in the library and you're chewing gum loudly and that's social nonverbal behavior. There's certain behaviors we have to do when we're around other people socially. Okay. The social verbal behavior is the thing that we all know social skills to be. It's the conversations we have when we're asking someone for something we want, or we're commenting on a TV program when you're sitting next to someone. That classifies as social verbal behavior. So even online schooling, where only the teacher is speaking and the children don't have a chance to respond, it also classifies as social verbal behavior.
Yeah. And why do you think that it is so important in the developmental point of view in children?
It's important for every single one of our personal interactions. Okay, whether we're interacting with somebody, or as a child interacting with another child, or an adult interacting with an adult, just talking and communicating, whether it's with kids at school or colleagues at a workplace, you form a personal bond with people around you, and that personal bond relies on social skills. So when we don't have these social skills, we tend to not perform as well in the real life. Like children who struggle socially at school, who struggle in making friends, are less likely to do well academically as well, because whether it's the feeling of being singled out or the feeling of being upset they don't have friends, the social aspect even affects the non-social stuff like academics. It's the same at a job. If you are more socially equipped, your boss will notice you more. You will get promoted in a quicker way. You draw attention to yourself and you become more successful. Whereas when someone who struggles socially at work, even if they're doing the same thing as you are, you will find that they will be missed. They won't really get that, So actually, social skills from very young is important because it actually equips an adult also socially in the future. So the younger we learn these skills, the younger we have practice being social with the people around us, the more likely we will be successful as adults socially as well. The main thing that I feel that for children is the most important part of children's social skills is that you build up a history with that struggle. So if I struggle at the age of 5 making friends, I kind of will always remember that I struggled. I will build up this history. So and when I want to tackle it to a 15-year-old who has struggled for 10 years with his social skills, it's much harder because I need to teach that child to unlearn everything they already know socially before they can learn something new. So they become less fluent with it. That's why social skills, when you don't target it young, it becomes a lot more hard to target. It's not as fluent, you'll find some things that seem more robotic. Children who say, when you ask a child, how are you? They say, I'm fine, even if they're not fine. Things like that. Socially, they will do a lot of things differently if they're not learned those social skills at the right age.
Yeah. And Areesa, what can be the impact of underdeveloped social skills in children? Like if they are not developing it, what can be those red flags that we need to observe as parents and teachers, that we are seeing that they are not able to, for instance, understand social cues or emotions? Other than that, what are the different pointers that we need to focus on?
I think the main one is the lack of back and forth interaction. It doesn't have to be a conversation. It can also be when you're playing a game, the child that doesn't know how to give up something to get something. So what you'll find is communication involves, I will ask you a question, you have to hear my question, then you will respond to my question. So we have a back and forth interaction right now. With children who are nonverbal, they have other forms of back and forth, right? You'll find that a baby will do something and then they'll look at the mother to see if she's watching him or her do something. That back and forth, the eye looking to try and get the attention, the behavior that a child shows somebody in the room to try and make them notice what is important to them. That's a very big, if a child doesn't do that, that becomes a noticeable red flag in social skills. Another one is probably tolerating other people. So if a child is in a room playing by themselves and somebody else walks into the room and they react very badly, even though that person is somebody there that isn't a stranger, that becomes another, they lack the tolerating of other people in their environment. They prefer playing by themselves or being by themselves. Another one is eye contact, but not necessarily eye contact where they just look at you when you're talking to you, more that when they're responding. So children who don't listen to what their parents tell them to do, they still look at the parents, okay? So if you ask a child, do this, they'll look at you and they won't do it. It doesn't mean that they don't understand what you want them to do. It actually just means that they're not listening. They're just being naughty. It's not a big deal. But that eye contact, if you talk to them and they don't even react, it's as if you haven't said anything and they don't even flinch. That's another thing that I would look out for. So for me, in socially, these are maybe the three main things I would be looking out for a child that struggles socially.
Okay. And why is that children with the special needs have difficulty in developing social skills? And is that true that children on a spectrum will always have underdeveloped social skills?
No, it's not true. No matter what your limitations are, when we target any limitation, whether it's for a typically developing child or a special needs child, it's about when you target it and what you target. If you target the right thing and you target at the right age, children can meet their milestones. It's not a permanent deficit, okay? And so no matter what, so children with special needs tend to lack basic social skills from a very young age. Now, there are two main reasons for this. One is it's a deficit, okay? So they're not going to talk to somebody or ask someone to play because they don't know how to. They don't have the skill. They're not yet conversing. They don't speak more than one word, but that's a deficit. They just don't know how to do it yet. And another one is the performance deficit. So they're not motivated enough, okay? So when they try and drag your hand to go play, you don't listen to them. They stop dragging your hand. They don't want to play with you anymore because it's too much effort. And so they stop trying to engage with you because they never got anything when they tried initially. So you'll find a lot of children do things and suddenly they stop doing it. And parents feel, it's actually a very big behavior that I see is a lot of children who used to do many things, suddenly parents feel, now he stopped doing it this year. It's actually because of what was happening after they did it. So if the child was always trying to get your attention and you're too busy working, eventually they give up. They find other ways to fill their time. So that's part of the performance reason. That affects their motivation, I would say. But it's a misconception. I think the misconception is that children with autism don't want to socialize. That's not true. In fact, it's very rare that I've met I can't hear you.
In Zuran's case, he's quite a social kid.
Yes, he's extremely social. And he has he has the prerequisite skills. He will engage with you. He will laugh. He will look at you to look at him. He has all of those prerequisite skills. But that's where I come. What ends up happening is you meet a child with autism who's 15 and parents will be like, he just likes to be by himself. It's not really the case. Most of the time, the children don't know how. You see, the first thing is children with special needs don't get exposure to children their own age from a young age. What ends up happening is if your child is 3 years old and he's on the spectrum, parents don't send these children to school. So the children never meet other children their own age. So you'll find these children are more likely to talk to adults or older cousins. So because they're not meeting children their own age, children learn to imitate, right? They learn via imitation. So what ends up happening is we're putting children with special needs not in an environment they see people to imitate, right? There's no one to imitate for them because they're at home. You're focusing on speech, but you're not focusing on how they should be social in that there's many ways to be social without using words, But I feel it's a big one that children on the spectrum tend to not get that exposure early on. So by the time they get the exposure, they get speech and they get the exposure, they will only stick to talking to adults because they're used to talking to adults. The therapists are adults. the parents, children don't have the patience. A 5-year-old child who's struggling to tell their friend to play with them, another 5-year-old isn't going to listen. But a 10-year-old may. So you will find that the kids will tend to stick to the social interactions with the history of the other children giving them that attention. So you will actually find that most children on the spectrum have a preference to older kids or older or adults when they are conversing. And the other thing is, you said that they may always struggle with, with things like public places, or, it's not. The reason children struggle with public places in particular is because many things that isn't under their control can go wrong in a public place, right? So there are many variables. How can they function best in routine? They function best in structure. You take them to a place that they meet 100 people. Each person can do 100 different things through what they expect. The shops may shut suddenly. The line at McDonald's is longer than it was last week. These things they can't control. So when children can't control and they don't understand these things that they can't control, you'll find that they don't even want to go to the public place. Yeah. But that again is something they learn. It's not a natural avoidance. Okay, so it's like a child being bullied at school doesn't want to go to school and will avoid school if they can. It's not necessarily because they don't like school, but it's because something has happened there and they've learned that if they don't go, that won't happen. You know what I mean? But so it's not true. Like, I know that if you put a routine, these kids work with routine. So if we set up a routine and be like, every Saturday we will go to McDonald's, then we'll go to Dolmen, and then we'll do this, you will see your children will struggle if you change the plan. So if you tell them no Dolmen today, they'll be like, what? And it's a public place. But they won't be able to understand that change equally well. So it's not necessarily that they don't want the social.
And I think it applies to every child. So not just with the children with special needs. Every child learns the same way. True.
Yeah, definitely.
And Areesa, is there a connection between developing emotional skills? Is it true that if a child is not developing social skills, he or she might not develop emotional skills that well as well?
So usually social and emotional skills kind of develop side by side. Okay, so it's social emotional development. But the way I look at it, I think children actually tend to develop the emotional development before the social part. Okay, so emotional development will refer to them understanding their own thoughts and feelings, whereas social development involves them being able to relate their own thoughts and feelings to somebody else. So a child will understand that they are not comfortable or not happy before they will understand that you aren't, if that makes sense. So the social part involves them observing someone, to see, oh, how is that person feeling? And then you'll ask, okay, that person doesn't look happy, so now we're going to ask them how they are. That's part of your social emotional development. So when basic things, we behave differently with our parents, we behave differently with our teachers, we behave differently with different people, right? So that's the social development part. But if you don't really develop a sense of self, the social part struggles. But if you don't develop the social start, it's possible that I would say they are very linked. Okay, so I think when children start to develop a sense of themselves, that falls in their emotional development. So they'll figure out, okay, this is how I feel about myself, this is what I'm feeling, and this is what I expect when I interact with other people. So what ends up happening is it kind of puts a standstill. Yes, they know how they feel, but they won't look to how somebody else would feel about how they're feeling, if that makes sense. So it does build on each other. So as your emotional development is targeted, your social development also gets facilitated very much the same way. So I would say they both should be targeted, or they both kind of develop together.
Okay, so would it happen, for instance, if you are targeting social behaviors, automatically the emotional skills will go up as well?
Yeah, because if I target social behavior, I target a child looking at another person. When you target a child looking at the other person, you can teach the child how to infer, okay, now the person's eyebrows are like this, their body is slouched. What does that mean? How do you think they're feeling? When do you do that behavior? Many children with any special needs, they need things that are concrete and that they can see. It's really hard for them to understand the things they can't see. So when you can give them, so you will find that they won't understand if you are sad, but you're trying really hard to be brave. They won't be able to guess that, But if you look like you're crying, they will know you're sad, because that's how they learned. They learned that crying means sad, and this is, you know what I mean? So you actually should, that's kind of how I see it. So I feel like when you target social skills, automatically you would target them together. I would not target social alone, because social skills requires us to know that these are the things I feel, and now I'm looking at you to see what you must be feeling. So it kind of it facilitates each other.
Okay. I remember when Zuren was developing eye contact, and whenever I used to call his name, he used to look at me first, that in what reference am I calling him? Am I angry? Am I just calling him for some work or something like that? And then he used to react. So he used to take his time to read my face, the way you said, the eyebrows and all of that. So he would know. And if he would know that I'm saying his name with anger, he would just leave what was in his hand and run. So he knew, okay, I'm doing something which is not right.
Yeah, definitely. And the observing, he kind of, you see, when a child looks at us, they search, right? Because if they're verbally not so great, then what you find is they don't need to be. The reason they're verbally, they find other things to substitute what they know of the world. So what ends up happening is they look longer at you, try and figure out, if you look a little bit more confused, they look even longer. If you, just basic. So if a mother usually doesn't wear makeup and suddenly the mom has worn this bright red lipstick, the child will look longer, because they won't know what's going on, It's basic things like that. They will notice, even if you don't know that they're noticing.
True. And another question I'll ask, okay, can social anxiety lead to poor social skills?
So I actually feel like social anxiety, I recently did a course on social anxiety, actually, and they actually spoke about how social anxiety is not just special needs children. It's actually anybody who has social self-awareness. So I would experience some social anxiety. You will experience some social, because we are aware of how we feel, and we are guessing how the other people feel. When I am meeting a parent for the first time, I will guess how that parent might feel about things, right? So I'm inferring and guessing. And when I don't know for sure, there will be some anxiety. So anybody who shares a space and when we just caring about what another person may feel or think will give us some sort of social double thinking, like we'll think twice. Are you sure that's the right thing for me to tell the parent? Is she ready to hear this? That's for myself, but you will find the same teachers when they're communicating with the mother. Some teachers say too much, right? They say too much. Parents aren't ready. Parents shut down. So the teachers have to infer what the parents may feel. They have to infer what they feel and how much they can communicate without impacting the relationship with the parents. So this ultimately is what affects how we ourselves feel. If I'm concerned about how you are feeling, I'm automatically feeling things as well. So that presents a social anxiety. Okay, so anything that relates to how we feel about how other people are feeling. So you could, for example, I give you an example. You could seem extremely social, extremely confident, and you can still have social anxiety. It's a feeling. So it exists because we compare ourselves to other people. So the one thing that happens is our children sometimes don't have that self-awareness, and they don't have that personal comparison yet. They don't understand. When they're young, they don't really understand that they are different. But you see, there's an age when our children suddenly don't want to do the differentiated work in the class, right? Why is their work different from other people? When their children are running it out in PE and they can't go, what's happening? This is what social anxiety is. They start to compare why they're not like other children. And I actually think that some of the schools in this country, they single out children. So children who have a shadow teacher are always seen as the children. And you'll find that some parents are like, okay, my child is so sensitive, so the shadow teacher has to pretend to work for the class teacher, not for the child, because they don't want their child to notice that there's something different. That comparison is actually the social anxiety. So it happens because our motivation to be, we're not successful in integrating with the society, you know? So if I don't have the skill, you've put me in a room where I don't have it, what will I do? I will end up feeling anxious. But it doesn't necessarily mean I won't have good social skills because of that anxiety. Okay. So some people can put it on. Okay. So poor social skills actually is what causes social anxiety. So if I feel I can't integrate, I will feel anxious. But feeling anxious doesn't make me have poor social skills, if that makes sense. It's usually the other way. So children with autism, for example, they have sensory needs, right? So that creates anxiety as well, because they become overwhelmed. They walk into a room and everybody is so unpredictable. Suddenly the noises are so unpredictable. You know, they start spinning objects or stimming, all sorts of things, right? Because of that doesn't really affect, yes, it causes poor social skills, because if they're behaving like that, no child wants to go close to them, if that makes sense. But it's not actually that they have poor social skills, it's that they have a need at that mid time, if that makes sense. I wouldn't say that, oh yes, I'm anxious, so socially I'm not equipped. It's not like that. It's more likely that I can't fully be social with other people, so that's what's caused me to feel anxious.
Okay, and can that be, for instance, if a child is very much social, he likes to be in public places, and he's okay around people, but his sensory needs, trigger the anxiety, and that might lead to, social anxiety as well.
Yeah, so children who become aware. So the one thing you have to remember is when a child has a sensory needs, at that minute, they're not aware. They don't know that, oh my God, they're stimming, so all the children have run away from them. There's not that awareness, because at that minute, they just need self-regulation. Okay, they need a sensory regulation thing. So they'll jump 3-4 times until they feel calm. Then they'll go back into the group of friends, right? But other friends will be like, oh my God, he was jumping like that, so we don't want to play with him. This happens, and it happens much more with younger children, because younger, typically developing children have an understanding of what's the same about them and what's different about them. But they don't understand yet why people are different. So they tend to have a bigger exclusion. You will find that the exclusion in a grade 1 classroom is much more than a grade 4 classroom. Grade 4 classroom will have integrated, they will have an understanding, they will have accepted, because their growth and their awareness becomes more. But when they're only 6, they only understand people not being like them. So what ends up happening is that's possible. That environment will create social anxiety, because if your child goes to school and there's so much happening in the room that is so sensory overwhelming for them, yes, they will show the behaviors that they can't control. And it's possible that because other kids are not going to interact with them, their social skills will drop because they don't have practice. You know what I mean? If they're not, no child is trying to talk to them, then they're not talking back. So that is the reason why the social skills will drop, not the behavior.
Okay, and I think it gets better with the age.
Yeah,
that the children develop understanding. Yeah,
and also our children find their own ways of regulating themselves. Like adults, like it's not to say that adults don't have sensory difficulties, right? You'll have an adult biting their nails all the time. It doesn't make friends not want to talk to you. You get adults that twirl their hair. It could be sensory. You get adults that flicks a pen again and again. It could be sensory. They need to tap, but they've replaced it with something more socially acceptable. If I'm in a room and I'm tapping my pen again and again and again, no one is going to single me out. But if I jump in the middle of a room, it will. So you will see that children will learn strategies themselves of what is socially appropriate ways of having these sensory things in different environments.
Yeah, I had a session with Fazli Azim. He is an advocate of autism, and he said that when he was a child, he had many sensory issues. So he said that one day I squeezed a ball and I felt better, and it helped me to block all the other sensory the whatever I was feeling. So it helped me. So with those trial and errors, I think children learn that if I am able to do this, I felt better, I felt calm, so I
Yeah.
should do. Yeah, true.
That's exactly
Okay,
it. They
and
learn
yeah,
themselves by their own experience, right? Because they need to find what helps them more than any of us
yeah,
do. So they will
yeah,
learn themselves. It's just how long it takes for them to learn.
yeah. And I remember when you mentioned me in one of the sessions with Zuren that Zuren will keep changing his sensory behaviors, and he will outcome some and then develop new. So I think this is what he is learning also by himself, that okay,
Yeah.
if I did this, I felt better, so I should stop doing that.
It's
So I
also
think
like,
this is
yeah, like for Zoran, it's if we gave him the tools, right,
mm,
to get the sensory needs met, he won't need to do the behaviors that he's trying to do to get it met. That's why sensory integration training and sensory diet that people put on their children, it gives them a more appropriate way than getting it the way they are getting it. So a child that suddenly jumps in the middle of a classroom, maybe that child just needs to be taught to go to the class teacher, say, I need 2 minutes, leave the room, jump, and come back. That then
come
they
back.
don't get
Yeah.
attention. You just need to teach them that it's totally okay that they need this. They just shouldn't do it in certain environments because we don't want them to be socially excluded. We want them to get
Yeah.
what they want in a place that
Mm,
they shouldn't feel that. No, the one thing I would say is that a child who mouths objects, I would never tell a parent, stop it. Yes, stop a small object because you don't want to get choked, but the child needs it.
mm,
You need to find something else that is safer for the child to mouth rather than small
mm,
objects that they're usually mouthing. I mean, I would
yeah.
never stop a sensory seeking behavior. I would just try to replace it with something that is safer.
Which is more socially acceptable
Yeah,
and safer
yeah,
for the child also.
exactly. Like obviously, if the
Yeah.
child is somebody that is, biting themselves, then you have to make sure that
Mm,
that they don't bite their skin. They obviously need something else.
yeah.
You find an appropriate replacement behavior for what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember you introduced even chewy tube to Zuren. I didn't even know that there are chewy tubes, and you brought it from Dubai. So I think you are not just a behavioral therapist for me. You are like the occupational therapist.
No, I mean, my knowledge from occupational therapies is just because I have worked with so many, but I don't know how to administer a sensory diet. I don't know. I just know that
Yeah.
yes, children who mouth objects, if you give them crunchy food, they tend to mouth less. I know those types of things, but from a behavior point of view, we really focus on trying to give them an appropriate place to do it. So I would focus on, okay, you can't obviously jump when you're in the car. That's not a safe behavior. We would focus on
Yeah.
jumping when you're in your bedroom. You can. Don't jump when you're on the dining table. We would teach them environments where they can do it versus environments that they can't. That's how a
And
behavior.
I think with that, the in the concept of inclusive education and inclusive environment is that okay, we are teaching the child to do certain behaviors in certain situations, but on the other hand, those who are looking at it should not, look
Yeah.
at them in a way that they feel that they are different. So I think
Yeah.
inclusive education, this is the part where they need to work on, especially
Yeah.
in this country.
The thing is something that we have to realize also. I feel that when you look at a school where inclusion is there from age 4, age 3,
Hmm.
the children who are typically developing in that class learn skills that they cannot be taught. To be in a room,
Hmm.
in a classroom, and have a friend with Down syndrome and autism and understand, okay, today's not a good day for him. That's okay. You can't teach that kind of empathy, that kind of inclusive
Yeah.
attitude. You can't teach it.
True.
When you put a child with a child with autism suddenly into a 15 class of 15-year-old children, they've never seen it
Yeah.
before. They're not as great kids. Do you know what I mean? But the 3-year-old who grew up in that environment, the skills they learn by the time they're 15, I think is amazing. It's also not just the children that need it. It's everyone in that room will
Yeah.
benefit from
Yeah.
having an inclusive society.
But I think parents, in this culture especially, would avoid putting their normal children in an inclusive school so that they don't learn certain bad behaviors from those children. So I think these are the
So to be
what do I
honest,
say?
I'm going to be
Yeah.
honest. I feel children have bad behaviors no matter what. Okay,
Yeah.
so you don't need to be special needs to have a bad behavior. Okay, so if you're in a room with a typically development child, they may do the same things, and your child will still learn. For me, just because I'm a massive advocate of, I feel that the children all over the world are all in classes with inclusion from a very young age. And I feel the skills that we teach these kids, we teach them tolerance, we teach them acceptance, we teach them how to include. It's very difficult. When you're 15, yeah, you'll be nice to the special needs child in your class, but you'll never really include them in the same way because you will see them as different. And you can't train a child to stop that because you've brought the child up in an environment where you have made them not exposed to that. So they never learn. You know what I mean? But if they have always, then your schooling is fully included. Then when you get a job, you see what they can do. It becomes, overall, it's a knock-on effect. Everything becomes fully included. And I think as people, we become better people.
True. Absolutely. I think I'm a better person because of my son. He has taught me so many, and the way you said it, that every child has problematic behaviors. I'll tell you one example that I had like a dinner at my place, and it was the first dinner get together at my place after getting to know about my son's diagnosis. And Zuren has this mouthing behaviors, and he doesn't sit much. He roams around. So I used to be very anxious earlier when Zuren is about to interact with people. And when they came in with their children, I cannot tell you how well behaved my son was in front of them. And I remember they asking me, Tuba, how are you handling him? He is, mashallah, such a disciplined child. And because, and then I realized that, yes, every child has different difficult behaviors.
Yeah.
We just should not target these because they are special needs.
Yeah.
True. Okay, and Areesa, another question that I think many of my members also misunderstand, that if a child is shy or introvert, does that mean that they are not socially, they haven't developed social skills?
No, actually, introvert is just a personality type. Every person in this world is his or her own person, right? So being introverted doesn't mean you're weak or you lack anything. It just because a child isn't outspoken doesn't mean a child can't stand up for themselves or find other things that work for them. So everyone is different. And I feel like there's really no preferred personality type. Okay, so it's not that, extroverted people do better than introverted people. Actually, you want to look at it, extroverted people also commit more crime than introverted people. They're more confident in trying different things, like there's no right, there's no personality type that we should be trying to make our kids. But there's a fine line between deciding whether that child is shy, avoiding people, or introverted. So it depends.
That is what the question is.
Yeah. So it kind of depends on why. Does the child like to be around people, but they don't know how to, or they don't have the skills they need to be socially in that environment? Or is the child introverted in that they have their own way? They want to engage with one person at a time. They don't want to be in a room with 50 people, but they will engage when there's two. Children have the right to have their own preferences, and however they would like to engage with other people. The one thing I feel that may happen is that when you are a parent who is extroverted, you are social, you have lots of friends and you're bubbly and you're always meeting your friends. When your child suddenly doesn't want to, you panic. You're like, oh my God, there's something wrong with him. He wants to be alone. He wants to play he wants to read a book. I don't want to read. You kind of want your child to be like you. It happens. You feel like, I wasn't like this when I was young. Why is he like this? There's nothing wrong with it. Like I feel like children have a right to be the way they want to be. The only thing is you have to make sure that is what their preference is, and not that they don't know how to be with other people. So if you feel like, okay, when they're with friends, they don't speak and they so desperately want to go and be with friends, then you have an obligation of trying to teach them how to be with their friends. But if they are happy with doing what they're doing wherever they are, I don't think we should be, it's not antisocial behavior, it's the child's right. This is what they like. So as parents, as therapists, as adults, we actually should be looking at what will help improve their quality of life. So would it improve their quality of life if they had one friend? Would it improve their quality of life if they had 50 that they couldn't communicate with? I would look at it that way. You figure out what they want, then figure out what they need to be fully functioning people in the world, and intervene where you feel like they need it. Don't intervene because you want them to be a little bit more like you. And it's a big one, because I do feel like parents, the one thing as parents, when you have a child that suddenly doesn't meet the milestones of your first child, you suddenly feel that there's something wrong. Or you have a child that didn't behave when the way your first child was behaving, or the way you were when you were a child, then you panic. You feel like, oh, why this child's not happy? Why is the child, or maybe he's being bullied. It's something that we have to be careful to not impose what we want for them on what base, and replace it with what they want from themselves.
True.
So I mean, that's where I would comment this. Yeah.
And parents fear that if their child is shy or introvert, they will become antisocial when they become an adult. And what do you have to say about that?
If they're shy and they really want, if you can have an open line of communication with your child, if they panic, if tomorrow they need to do a presentation in front of class and that whole night they can't sleep, or when somebody new comes into the house and they hide between your legs so that they don't see that person, that also isn't socially acceptable, right? So you have to teach children how to tolerate. You don't have to teach the children to be social in the way that you want them to. So in that perspective, I would target a child sitting next to you for 3 minutes, not between your legs. And at the end of 3 minutes, I would focus on, okay, what do you want? They're like, okay, I want to go in my room. Go. You just need to teach the child to do what is socially acceptable, because when the child hits 25 and gets a job, being shy will restrict their work. Okay, so how will they work in an office if any new person passes their desk and they go hide under the desk? You can't, you have to intervene there. You have to teach them what is the right way. You have to tolerate some, even if you don't like it, to fully be independent in the world. We have to learn how to place an order on the phone for food. We have to learn to pay money at the supermarket. These things we would need to do, It's not, and it's not shy won't excuse it. We still need to do it, because otherwise you're going to make your child dependent on you always. So it's a fine line on between whether you are targeting the child socially, like you want them to have 5 play dates a week and you want them to interact with their friend. I wouldn't target that. I would target the real life sort of social interaction. So take your child to the supermarket, make your child give the money to the, those types of skills. Because your child will have to do that in the future.
Yeah. And I think that is, and in that way, we are teaching them the basic social skills, and we are teaching them how to interact also with the minimal interaction also.
Exactly.
So I think this will be, so this will be a great way. And because sometimes I've heard parents saying that, I have to teach my child to go out public, otherwise he will become an introvert, or he will become an antisocial. So I think this is what needs to be targeted. But again, what you said, that there is a very fine line. We should not impose that because we are social, so they have to be social.
Yeah, but you want to include, if you want to go to a restaurant once a week, you want your child to sit when the waiter comes and takes an order. These things you should target, because it involves inclusion into the society. If your child is too shy and doesn't want to ever go to a restaurant, your quality of life also gets affected. So you have to remember that as parents, you also need to take care of yourself. You are the best mother for your child when you are also happy. So when you are stressed and you stop doing the social things that you usually do, you tend to become, you're too upset. You won't be able to do the best that you can. So it's important that parents also take time for themselves and target the things that allow you as a family to be social. Like tell your child, okay, today you don't place an order yourself. You point to the thing that you want when the waiter comes. Tomorrow you can say, waiter, you can teach your child to target goals. You'd be like, okay, this is the new activity we're going to do at the same restaurant. If your child is shy, go back to the same restaurant again and again. The waiters will understand. You can teach your child to be there. Then you can introduce a new restaurant. There are many things that you can do to fully include your child into society rather than just the worry, it's okay for him to be introverted. It's okay for him to be shy. None of these things should restrict their functioning in the world. That's all you need to be careful about. Because if you are an adult and you have very few friends and you don't meet your friends every week, you can still fully live a successful life. But if you are somebody who can't go out and place an order, you can't, interact with the shopkeeper, then you can't. You become always dependent on someone else. And as parents, the biggest worry that you have is your kids are alone, right? Like, who will take care of your kids when, this is a massive issue that parents will face. So when we tend to take and do a lot of our activities for our children, they never learn to do things themselves. So it's really important that you target the things for them to do themselves.
So they become independent physically and emotionally. They don't outsource their self-regulation. They know how to be responsible for their own emotions. And I think these are very interesting and very playful goals. That you're going out as well, you're there with your children, they feel safer, it's the same environment, same place, as you said, they're going to the same restaurant. I think this is a very good way. And then Areesa, there's this other opposite end of parents who don't want them to be socializing more, stay home, focus on their studies, otherwise they won't get into the best college. So what do you have to say about that?
To be honest, with everybody, all of us, we are the most successful when we have a sense of balance. So when we're hyper focused on one thing, it's just not healthy, whether it's a diet, the type of food we eat. We're not, if we eat only one thing, we become too focused, it doesn't become healthy for us. So social situations actually teach children to behave. And if you expose them to social situations, they learn different scenarios and different behaviors. As of now, I feel like schooling now is we're learning that at this exact time of the virus, where schools are all online, what is happening? Children are learning. Parents are worried that, oh my God, this is lack of, teaching time and our children are not learning right now. But there's so much more for children to learn than the things they learn in books or the things there's much more to learning than academics. Children right now are learning so many things just being at home, giving children independent work to do at home, giving children who prefer to cook, letting them watch you cook, letting them cook. Establishing a routine with your child is constructive. It's like their downtime, there's a lot more learning that can happen than just academics. And I feel that when you kind of restrict your child, at some stage, your child will rebel. Okay? So I believe that parents should give logic. Like, parents must explain to children, okay, do your work, then you can go out. If you don't do your work, sure, don't go out because you didn't finish what you had to do. But ensuring that back and forth communication, don't tell your child, don't do it only. Tell them why you don't want to do that. Explain it to them. They will understand when you use logic. They will also find ways to give you what you want and still get what you want, So I feel that to protect your child from a social interaction gone wrong, you just have to maintain an open communication with your kids. You have to make sure if something goes wrong outside, your child is coming and letting you know. You have to make sure if your child wasn't allowed to go outside and experience these things, your child will handle their problems themselves. That's actually probably more harmful. So you have to just make sure that your children can be open enough with you. I think that as overall than any other kind of restriction, I think that is the best advice I can give.
Yeah, and I think it's a great advice. I think, and yes, that is what is required, that you need to be open with your children. So yes, if there's something gone wrong, they'll come back and tell you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest concerns, even my brother was saying that to me, that he lives in Hong Kong. I mentioned that his son, that they were in the quarantine, and now Hong Kong have just released the lockdown. So they're out, but his son is not able to socialize with that same way he was socializing before quarantine. So how should parents deal with this?
I actually think we're all going to have a really tough time when everything opens up. I think our normal now is very different to what it used to be. Many people actually, I think, will continue to work at home for some part of their time. If you're getting a lot of your work done, you probably will continue to do it. I know some therapists will continue to deliver online therapy even when clinics have opened around the world, you know. Children will have it the hardest, obviously, especially the younger children, because their history of social interactions are much less. So it'll be easier for them to forget how to play with their friends. You know, communication, I feel the best thing that you can do is to communicate. It is a bad time for everybody. It's not specific to our children versus the adults, it's everybody. So when you tell your child what to expect, you know, you can role play scenarios to them. Okay, these are things that could happen when you go back to school. These are things that may make you upset. These are things that you should look out for. Giving them that expectation so that they have something to look for when schools open up, that could be a really good way to prepare them. Another thing you could do is you could write social stories. But social stories are good for children who really struggle with change. So children with autism who communicate but don't communicate their self-awareness, they don't communicate their emotions as fluently. Social stories have been, evidence shows that social stories have been really, really effective in teaching them about the environment and what to expect in a social situation. Some of our younger kids role playing, you know, when you play with them, make them wait their turn. Don't give it to them each time. Let them lose at a game sometimes. They should learn the scenarios that you will experience in a school, you know? Another thing you could do is if you everybody has family all across the world, you could arrange for WhatsApp video calls with different people so that your child learns to communicate and see people that they don't see every day. So what happens is that children become so used to seeing the same people, and they don't remember how to interact with people outside of their norm. So I actually would use this time to get in touch with all your family members across the world, expose your children to new people, even if it's for 2 minutes. You're engaging them in a different kind of social interaction. Okay, and now more and more people are doing video calls and talking on the videos, you know. This is the part, I think, that we could aim at. And
it's safer. And you were saying something is biggest?
I said, I think the main thing is whatever happens, you must, the one takeaway is that children should understand that it's okay to feel that discomfort or to feel uncomfortable. They just need to be able to share it. So the one big thing is that you prepare your child for what may happen, but you can't prepare you can't role play every scenario that could take place, right? So you just need to make sure that your child understands that, look, it's a strange time for everyone. Everyone's going to struggle, but it's okay to struggle. It's just all you need to do when you're struggling is you need to let me know so I can problem solve the situation with you. So you want to try and tell your child that you're going to struggle too. It's not just the child. So a lot of the times when children feel upset, they think they're the only people who ever feel upset. No one has been upset before. You know, you actually need to teach them that it's completely normal for everyone to feel what they're feeling right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is what is we need to understand, that it's everyone who is going through. And yes, children are going to suffer a little more because they don't know how to handle the change and emotions the way we do. So we need to, and I think this is the safest way to have the interaction going on with the family members online, even for 2 minutes, as you said. I think that's a great idea. And Areesa, can social skills be taught, and how ABA can play a role in that?
Yeah, actually, most therapies tackle social skills either directly or indirectly. So you'll get social skills in speech and language therapists will tackle social skills in, you know, conversation. They will tell you what to expect in a social scenario, what I've asked you, how are you? What can you say to me? These types of things is what a speech therapist usually tackles. But then OT tackles things like sitting in a circle, tolerating the person sitting next to you. When everybody gets up to move into another area, you get up and follow them. So social skills actually gets taught in all sorts of therapies. Social skills in general, children learn them through observation and then imitation. Okay, so if our children have limited attention, they're not going to observe. So then they are not likely to copy what they're seeing because they've not even looked at what's going on, right? So then you will have our children who have, you know, fine motor or gross motor difficulties. For them, imitation is much harder. So if everyone is clapping their hands, they can't clap their hands yet. They haven't quite got there. So what happens? they can't be part of that social skill becomes harder for them to target, ABA in particular, we focus on identifying socially significant goals. Okay, so the main goal of ABA is that we are targeting things not developmentally, like speech therapists tend to target developmental goals. So if your child has a delay, speech therapists will help you meet those goals, to bridge the gaps. ABA tackles the stuff that is socially significant. Okay, so I would teach a child to ask for water before I teach a child to say ABC. Okay, I don't target goals. Yes, of course, if the ABC is being taught in the classroom, yes, that would be something you target. But we target the socially significant goals that aims to improve the quality of life. Okay, so those goals involve things that help the child fully integrate into society. Okay, so whether it's at school or at work or independent living, it just we kind of pinpoint goals, like what is missing in the child's profile. So you run an assessment where you identify the things that are missing, and we teach them then in the natural environment that we need it to happen. So it depends on what the child needs, but we would teach it one-on-one, where you're targeting, things like waiting. If a child asks for something, the child needs to wait. If it's my turn, the child needs to wait. We teach them, then we teach them in paired sessions, group sessions, because obviously social skills is, if a child just listens to me, it's not good enough. The child needs to interact and listen to a group of children their own age. So social skills in ABA, I would say we tackle conversation. Also, we tackle the emotional regulation as well, like identifying emotions, identifying when that person may feel this way, identifying when I feel this way, and you're targeting group interactions and peer interactions as well. So how do you behave when you're in a group versus how are you behaving when you're alone? So ABA tackles a lot of these types of things, but we focus on data-driven. So I would identify a goal, and I would teach that goal until it's met in one setting. Then I would introduce it into a different setting or a different group or a different way. So it's so important that whatever we target, it's always being used. Okay. So if I'm targeting responding to name, for the child to just respond when I say their name, I need to make sure that I'm targeting it. Okay, the child has responded to the name when I'm alone on the table. Now the child is responding to name when I am 1 arm's distance. Now when I'm behind the child, he's turning and looking at me when I've said his name. We kind of target it step by step. And as soon as a child hits mastery, we kind of just make sure that it's the same skill that's being extended further and further, so that it's more likely to happen in the real world.
Yeah. And then this is what I loved about your work, because I remember when I met you before that, I remember you telling me that I'm like teaching Zuran to play a level 10 of the game, and I haven't taught him the basic level 1. So, and then of course when he's not able to do it, it becomes his failure. But again, we need to break it down into smaller steps and then go ahead. And I never knew that. And I've seen you doing that.
Yeah, but there are a lot of things, like why can't a child imitate? Is it because the child's not looking? Is it because the child can't move their fingers that way? Actually, you have to figure out what the skill that the child is lacking. You have to teach that skill. And then sometimes it's amazing. Sometimes I would teach level 10 to make sure to see what the child can and cannot do. So if I'm teaching a child to wash their hand, I would take the child and be like, okay, wash your hand and see what steps. They've opened the tap and then they run out. So at least I know I don't need to teach the child to open the tap. I now need the child to put, so it's a good way to decide what to teach by testing a bigger goal. But it's important that we teach the small steps first so that the child also feels success. So sometimes if we give them a 10-piece goal and they can't do it, they get frustrated, right? And now the second they see the same goal, they run. They're like, I'm not even going to come to the table. So it's important that we find the right thing to teach them. The best part I love about ABA is that the research shows that if we teach the same correct goal 3 times and there is no progress, we're teaching the wrong thing. We should revise the goal. Okay, so there should be some progress in what I'm teaching. If there is no progress, that goal, as I'm sure you know, I've told you, we've tried new goals and we've had to cancel them and reintroduce other goals.
And
some goals he has mastered so quickly And so we
Mhm.
realized, okay, this is the area that he's good at. So this area we're going to keep building on. And the thing that he wasn't mastering, I obviously wasn't teaching the right thing. So I obviously needed
Yeah.
to revisit that goal and come up with something else.
And I remember the day when you said that was my first meeting with you, when you introduced that graph sheet with me. And those
Yeah.
who are watching, another thing that I love about her, that she is so how do I say that? So evidence. This is the evidence. This is working. This is not working. And what I loved about that, you never ever said me that Zuren is not able to do this. You always said either this is not working because I'm not teaching in the way he can learn. I think this is not the right goal for him. I think the sensory needs are interfering and that's why he's not able. So this is, and I never knew that a professional can, take responsibility on them instead of putting everything on the child. Because before you, I've always said that I have met people who always given the blame on my son, that I think he's not ready to learn, he's not willing to learn. And you were the first person. That's why I always admire you so much, that you always have given me proper evidence, proper what is working, what is not working, and this is the reason why it is not working, and the reason is not Zuren at all.
It's not. It's something that we have to realize is that I believe that when a child can't learn, the child never needs to be taught the same thing again. Okay. So if I taught a child one time, they didn't get it. The second time, if I teach the child exactly the same way, he's not going to get it. He didn't get it the first
Yeah.
time. We just have to
Hmm.
find the thing that he needs to learn first. Because obviously what I've taught is it's a trial and error, right? We need to know exactly what will work for the child, and we found things that worked, right?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't
Yeah.
work or it doesn't work fast enough, then something else has to be targeted at the same time.
Yeah, and I remember when you found the right technique through which he was learning, he mastered the goal so quickly.
Yeah.
So, and then which meant that, okay, reintroduced the goal with a different technique, and it worked.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Areesa, just a question that, can ABA be helpful for adults who are having behavioral issues and social problems?
Yes. So ABA tackles all ages. So that because ABA's goal is to improve the quality of lives, ABA actually in the US and the UK are done for adults to help them with independent living. ABA actually is used to teach things like cooking or cleaning after yourself, or things like that. It's actually
Hmm.
used to allow people to live fully independent lives by themselves. So ABA is used for things like functional living skills as well
Hmm.
as things like behavior. Obviously, if there's a behavior, the only difference is ABA for children who are younger is just it's very, 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 very good, because the evidence that
Hmm.
shows that early intervention, ABA helps
Yes.
bridge a lot of gaps. When the older you are, you have a longer history of doing things in a way that is not working.
Hmm.
So it becomes much harder for you to unlearn it. But ABA is found to work with all ages, with all. You don't have to be a special needs child. It's ABA is done with animals in the zoo. It's literally
Yeah.
done with every
Yeah.
population, every problem.
Hmm.
Sometimes I do ABA on myself when I do some things that are wrong. I kind of mentally think, okay, that's not the right thing. Like cutting down
Okay.
just
Hmm.
basic things, cutting down the amount of TV I watch. I'll track it. It actually works
Hmm.
if you understand the reasoning behind it and you understand how it's done,
Yes.
and you take the data for it. It is effective in, I think, all scopes
Hmm.
of life. I'm a big
Hmm.
advocate for ABA.
Yes. And because of you, I am also a big advocate of that now.
I'm so
Because the
glad.
logic behind the reasoning behind it, and then tracking the record, that when it is happening, I have started. I remember you even told me that when is the time of the day when Zuren is more agitated. Just keep a record. You'll see a pattern. You'll definitely see a pattern. And I did. There was
Yeah.
a pattern. And then it was easier for me to help him.
No, I definitely think there's always a pattern into why we behave. Even us. Sometimes I feel like
Yeah.
if I'm having a bad day, I start recording, and sometimes it's like, okay, yesterday I slept 4 hours, so now today everything's
Mm.
making me upset, So actually, when you look into it and you realize how practical, the one thing ABA believes is behavior doesn't happen from nowhere. There's no such thing. We believe everything has a reason and everything is learned. So we learn why we should do certain things and what inappropriate behavior we're doing to get something, So because we believe that there's no such thing as random behavior, we're more open-minded to tackle some areas,
Absolutely. Areesa, I know you have another commitment, but I just need to take few questions.
No
I won't
problem.
take much. So
No,
there's
no.
this one question. According to your experience, does a child on the spectrum catches up with the emotions you convey to them with your body language and tone of your voice? Or are there any other ways to communicate your emotions with them?
Yes, definitely. They do understand emotion. You have to train it. Sometimes you have to teach it. So sometimes they'll only understand because a lot of the times when you teach emotion, you use cartoon pictures. I personally am not a fan of cartoon pictures. I feel you should introduce real life photos because if you look at a person smiling in real life and you look at the cartoon, the face is exaggerated. Nobody smiles like that when they're happy. So you actually, for me, I teach children by using proper photos of different people from different avenues. Sometimes it's the photos of their own family members, sometimes, but stick with real life images, so that you can teach them that all these people, the way they're looking, they're all happy. It doesn't mean that one person has to smile with their teeth showing versus somebody who's just smiling a little bit. We teach children the different faces that all mean the same thing. So you will find that sometimes children with autism kind of pay attention to detail. Okay, so they will look and they're very careful. So they will understand someone who is very, very happy, but they won't understand when it's happening in real life. There are many reasons for that. One is that we show our expressions very quickly. When I'm happy, I'm like smiling, and then within 3 seconds, it's gone. So the child didn't get a chance to look at you and understand and comprehend. So you actually see that sometimes when you're super fast paced and you're very quick, your kids don't get it. But then you have the alternate issue. When parents are always like that from a very young age, these kids get it instantly because they've been exposed to it. So it kind of depends on what the child gets exposed to, I feel. That is the biggest thing for me that teaches the child. But I feel just like any regular child learns how to feel emotion by watching TV or listening to somebody cry, or looking at somebody crying, hearing someone else says, "Oh my God, are you sad?" That's how typical children learn these feelings, right? So our kids sometimes need more teaching. So if they miss it because they're too busy playing with a bus or running up and down the house, they tend to miss the things that are happening in an environment that a typical child wouldn't miss. So because they tend to miss it, there's a chance that you actually need to teach it. Okay, so you would teach it. Use a lot of words at home when you're playing with, if you're playing with a ball, that your child is playing with a ball and laughing. Tell them, "Oh my God, you're so happy. Look at that. You're playing with a ball. You like the ball. It's made you happy." You would teach the child the different words that all mean the same thing. So I feel that when you target this and you teach it to them, they, of course, they will be able to communicate.
Okay. And there was this question, can you give tips on how to break the goals? I think it's very subjective, but anyways.
Well, for me, sometimes something that works for me is that I look at the child doing. So like I said to you, when we are teaching a child to wash their hands, I would take their child and deliver the instruction, wash your hands, and I would watch and see what the child is already doing. So
already knows how to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So you will find that the child doesn't open the tap. You open it, and suddenly the child has put soap and done this and doesn't close the tap. Then you'd realize the goal that you broke down that you need to teach your child is just opening and closing the tap. Do you know what I mean? So I actually feel sometimes you could take a video of your child or what they're doing and re-watch it so that you can see exactly what your child can't do. And then you could teach it one-on-one. It's the same with tying your shoes. It's the same. You start by looking at what your child can already do, and then you identify the steps they need to be taught to meet that whole goal by themselves.
Yeah.
So that's how I would tackle it.
Yeah. And there's one question, one comment, I think I have to take it. This is from my brother. I'm happy to see that Juran is in good hands. And
I'm
then
so
another question from him. Another question from him, that does natural scenarios suit children on spectrum?
um
I think, yeah,
with
go ahead.
I think with everybody, I don't know, I think for all of us, to be honest, if we're outside and we have the nature exposure, we automatically feel better. Like vitamin D
Yeah.
from the sun, the movement. A lot of our children need
Mm,
movement. Um,
yeah.
you know, outside is healthy for everyone. I don't wouldn't say it's specific to our children. Also keeping in mind that some of our children run off, we will have that issue.
Mm.
So when we take them to a public
Me,
place,
me.
yes. So when you take them to a huge garden, what happens? They run, and then becomes a
Run.
safety issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what ends up happening in these kind of situations is that I would target it first. I would target it with your own garden where you can control the safety.
Yeah.
Then I would expose it slowly. But
Mm.
I feel like our children should be exposed to the outdoors. Our children, there's so much more they can learn. It's a different environment for them to practice the same
Mm.
skills. But I wouldn't say that it's the natural environment, like the outside scenery and all these things. I wouldn't say those things are more helpful to a child on the spectrum than a child not on the spectrum. I feel like it's helpful for all our children.
For everyone.
Yeah.
True. I think I've taken a lot of your time, and thank you so much, Areesa, for doing this for me and this group. I'm glad and I'm honored that you could give us time. In the end, do you have to say any message or anything for the members?
No, this was actually it was really nice. You asked a lot of questions that I thought are very relevant to just, especially now, I think, because social
Yeah.
skills are an area that it's most real world to us right now with the situation with the virus.
Yeah.
If anybody has ever any questions, I'm happy to answer whatever. They can send you the questions and you can pass them on, and I'm happy to
And
answer
if they
any.
want to connect with you, how can they connect?
So right now, the clinic is taking appointments for me, whether it's online. I'm not seeing any new clients at the clinic. I'm only seeing the clients that I already have. But I do online consultations, and the appointments for the online consultations can be done straight via the clinic. You can just call and let them know, and and they will book you in and let me know.
And it's Parkview Clinic.
Yes, it's Parkview Clinic. I can send the details.
Yeah, I will add it in the
Yes,
description also of the
perfect.
video.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Areesa, for
no
doing this.
worries.
It was great having you.
Yes, it was great. Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
bye-bye.
I'll see you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, that was Areesa, and I can assure you that she is one of the best professionals I have met, not just for my son, but the way she teaches and the way she explains what is the reasoning behind the behaviors. I think sometimes it is not just the results that we need. We need to know the reasoning behind it so that we can make it more generalizable. We can make it more logical for the child as well. They don't know why they are behaving in certain ways, but when we know, we can explain that to them. And even if we don't know, how will we handle that? So we need to understand. And those who are looking for a good behavioral therapist, please approach Areesa. She is the best. And right now she is not taking any seeing any clients in the clinic because of this quarantine lockdown, but she's taking online. And I have taken online sessions from her as well, and it is as effective as one-on-one. So don't worry about कि online में नहीं समझ में आएगा या कुछ. She is as effective and professional in an online session as any other one-on-one session. So thank you so much. Sorry again because I had to start late. Suddenly the light was gone, no devices was working. Then I had to move it from the. Then the laptop connection failed. I had to come, and I think in the morning I got an email that StreamYard is supporting mobile hosting, so I had to shift to my mobile. Thank God, I think this was the reason that they started today, because there was no connection. So thank you so much for bearing that, and thank you so much for joining. And I will see you in the next session. Take care. Allah Hafiz.